Welcome back to the Infinite Jungle. On today's episode, I have with me a special guest, Giulio Rebuffo, CTO at Erigon. Erigon is most known for their Ethereum execution layer client, also called Erigon. Giulio, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to talk about many topics related to Ethereum protocol development. But before we get started, here is a quick show disclaimer. I need to remind you to please refer to the disclaimer linked in the podcast show notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice, an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Giulio, this is your first time on the Infinite Jungle show. I would love to start with a little bit of an introduction. You have been a developer at Erigon, I believe, for over 5 years now. I've heard you on these ACD calls, and very recently you were promoted to CTO of Erigon. Congratulations. Tell us a little bit about your journey into crypto. How did you get into this space, into this industry?
So I think I first entered crypto when I was still an high schooler. Actually, I'm actually really young. I'm only 22 years old. I started working on Erigon when I was 17 years old. And yeah, basically pretty much I was there from the very beginning when it was TurboGraf. And I basically started with Alexei Akunov. I was actually, I went to actually on ACD when I was 17, but it's a long, long time ago. And I didn't go on ACDs for a very long time after that. So I started being into crypto because I like to play with essentially smart contracts and especially DeFi. I started just by building stupid smart contracts, and then I saw that Alexei Akunov, at the time he was prototyping TurboGraf, and he was basically asking, he was really looking for people that could help him with building it, and also he wanted to teach other people how to be core developers at the time. It was there was like this vague announcement by him that he wanted to teach people to be core developers. And since I wanted to learn more, I just contacted him, and when I started working with him on TurboGraf and eventually became Erigon. So yeah, and from there I then worked on Erigon for basically my last year of high school. I went to university while working full time on Erigon, and I was actually the main engineer working on the merge for Erigon. Yeah, in 2021, right?
2022.
2022, yeah. In 2022. I still remember it. I just finished high school by then. I literally just finished high school in 2022. So yeah, so I'm relatively young. I was the youngest core developer at the time. I don't know if I probably also still am. And yeah, so I mostly work on archive nodes. I helped design Erigon's archive nodes, which was its main feature was to be good for RPC providers, and now I became the CTO of Erigon, and I lead the development of the new data model that you're working on, which is gonna be a new leap into efficient archive nodes and effectively also scale Ethereum without even changing the protocol.
That's very exciting. And also incredible story too, how you started off in high school contributing to Aragon, and now, 5 years later, here you are. Question about any learnings that you've had as you've grown into this role of being an Ethereum protocol developer. I think one of the things that many people talk about is burnout, and many people talk about is also the kind of toxic culture that can be created on X. How have you navigated, also at such a young age, how have you navigated kind of the pressure and the responsibility and all of the like ins and outs of being an Ethereum protocol developer at your age?
So yeah, so first of all, I think the main lesson is that you can just do stuff, essentially. Like if you want to do something, you can just do it. It's not like you're limited by anything most of the time. At least there are some unfortunate situations, but everyone, I think, living in a first world country can pretty much do stuff if they just want to do it. So that's the first lesson. You can just go ask people, and they will answer you. And I basically asked an Ethereum core developer to teach me how to code, which is who even does that? Like, who even does that as an high schooler? And my answer was yes, essentially. So I think if you just ask questions, you get answers, and you find out that many things are actually possible just by asking. That's, I think, the main takeaway from my entire journey. And regarding kind of the stress and the burnout, yes, I've been burned out, I think, 5 times in the past 5 years. And I've been burned out for like a month straight at one time. It was very, very bad. And actually at the very beginning, and that's very funny that you mentioned X, because at the very beginning of my career as a core developer, Erigon actually kind of joined the EGL into creating, essentially, I don't know if you remember it, maybe it was a long time ago, but essentially they were making this gas limit token that
Yes, I
yeah.
remember this.
And Erigon was, and since, I mean, we didn't we took it because essentially why not, right? They want to get, like, they just, that's it, like, why not? And after,
Funding.
huh?
It's
No,
funding.
it's not even about, wait, what? It's not about money. It's just that yeah, also that, but it's also the fact that we thought it was a cool idea overall, and why not helping them? And doing that put us kind of in a storm, and we were kind of target of some controversy. And yeah, I have been. It has been. It was a stressful time, but we came out of it. And also another thing that there is to learn there is that on X pretty much nobody remembers anything after 2 weeks, so it's completely fine. Honestly, it doesn't matter.
And there's some good things that come out of X. I would say that I didn't I've reached out to you initially through X. So there's like kind of connections of people you don't really know, but you can very easily access. I'm sure maybe the core developer that helped you code, it was through X as well, maybe?
It was through Gitter. I contacted him through Gitter.
Ah,
Yeah, I
okay,
contacted him through
gotcha.
Gitter. It was, yeah. But no, it wasn't X. But no, I agree. X is very useful. There is a lot of noise of X, but you can also find some signal if you know how to use it, in my opinion, right? You can kind of, for example, in Ethereum, you can kind of see the trajectory of Ethereum as a whole. Just to give an example, just by kind of going through all the X and all of the core narratives, you can see what's going to be the next hard fork, what's less likely to be in the next hard fork. So it's useful tool, but like any tools, it comes with a great power. And yeah, and there is also a lot of noise.
Yes, stupid, also sometimes entertaining.
Yeah, it's definitely an entertaining website. It's a very entertaining website. Yes, it's a very
And
entertaining website. That's for sure.
one of the conversations on X right now that is getting a lot of um, engagement and traffic is all to do with the discussion on what's after Pectra, what's next after Pectra. This was also the main topic, I would say, of the most recent developer call, where developers were talking. They were talking about process related things to Fusaka, but really they were talking about what the scope of Fusaka should be. And there was so many thoughts of EOF and PeerDAS in Fusaka only, or do we add in a couple of EIPs, or do we take EOF out? Lots of controversy on the scope of the next Ethereum upgrade. Nothing new there, but do you, Giulio, have a thought on the ideal scope of Fusaka? What, in your view, what should the next fork of Ethereum look like?
So first of all, the first. So I think it should definitely have PeerDAS, because that's very, very high value, and I don't think there is a lot of controversy around it. Everyone wants PeerDAS,
Yeah.
and it's part of Ethereum's main roadmap, and it needs to be done. Okay, so there I think we all agree on that. Regarding the execution layer, that's a very, very, very controversial, because in this fork we would like to include EIPs that fix some small bottlenecks to increase the block space, and there is also EOF, which is big and controversial. So right now, I think that there is some effort from some developers to push with EOF these other smaller EIPs that will allow you to increase the block space without creating DOS vectors. And yeah, and regarding EOF, I actually think it might actually get cancelled, because yeah, I think it might actually get cancelled because
Do you want it to get canceled?
Not so. The thing is this: it depends because you have like native account abstraction needs to come, in my opinion, with the increase in block space because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Uh, like an account abstraction, like native account abstraction with 7702, is a cool idea. But if contracts are too expensive to interact with, you're not going to have an UA as you're not going to have like a wallet contract, right? It's just unfeasible for users to pay more instead of just having a plain EOA, right? So I think that if worst come to worst, UF will be kicked out in favor of just block space, in my personal opinion, or at least that's also what I would like to see because UF without block space, it doesn't really make any sense. Like it's just a gun without about the bullets, in my opinion.
Why not both?
Yeah, why not both? I think we can have both. It's they're relatively small changes, but it is very political and people and it was very hard to push the cold data repricing into Pectra, actually. It was really, really controversial. Although it was a very small change, it was really, really controversial. And yeah, and so I think that it might come to the point where some people might be willing to do either one of the two things without the other. It could come to that, in my opinion.
That's fair. I want to talk to you a little bit about the politics in ACD calls.
Oh, wow.
Do you think that the I love the little the Lord save us sign. No, no, no. We're, all
Mhm.
God's people.
Right.
Um, well, about like the politics of the ACD calls. Do you think that there are client teams on those ACD calls that have a weightier voice, that have a larger voice than other people, or even not client teams, but certain researchers? Like, for example, the weight of what Vitalik says, the weight of what Ethereum Foundation researchers says, the weight of the Geth team. Like, do you think that the ACD cost process is fair in the way that these decision gets made, or is the downside of these ACD calls that usually like a certain number of people get a higher vote, like a weightier, um, like the group generally has to convince like these key people in order for like a decision to get made. As in, like it's not consensus, it's not majority always gets to decide. It's more if these key people agree with the decision, then you know the decision gets made.
So I think there is definitely people who wait more and wait less on ECD, like in any other organization or any other call, really. So I think so. Yeah. So I think that mostly it's people from the EF or the GAF team that have the most amount of weight. Usually, even this like it's a bit complicated because even if these two groups have a lot of voice, they also most time have contrasting opinions. Most times, yeah. So, for example, there is a lot of talk now from EF people that they want to raise the gas limit, like from Vitalik today in his article. But I can tell you that I don't think the GAF team really likes that, in my personal opinion. I don't think they really like the idea of raising the gas limit yet, and it also happened in the past actually that the GAF team didn't want to include EAPs from research because they were making the protocol too complex, and uh, and so they just didn't get included. So these two groups actually have very contrasting opinions. But said that, all of the others count. All of the other team counts a bit less, but they do count, and they have still a quite moderate voice. If everyone else decided to include a UF and the F says no, it still gets included, as we saw as we saw in the first scoping of Fusaka.
I recall you had proposed a gradual increase to the block gas limit that would, naturally increase over time, and it did not get into effect.
Yeah,
I'm so
didn't
sorry,
get yeah, it didn't.
but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but there's a new fork upcoming, and Vitalik wrote his post. Do
Mhm.
you think that your ideas and your proposals and your suggestions related to the block gas limit have a really high chance of making it into Fusaka?
Okay, so first of all, actually, I want to kind of go back to previous question because I realized I missed something, an important detail. I missed an important detail. So the reason why these groups have more power isn't because they're special or anything like that. It's because they act more, right? They act more. Like I said before, if you want to, you can do stuff if you just want to. And these people have much higher stakes into Ethereum than everyone else. And so they talk more, they engage more, they do research more, and consequently they also get a say into what goes into the protocol. So just to make things clear, I don't think the process is unfair. It's just that they just act more, they are more proactive, and they have higher stakes. They're key stakeholders, essentially, right?
Okay, well, to that point, the number of client teams has clearly grown. The number of stakeholders has grown. Do you think that's kind of diluting the voices of Ethereum Foundation and Geth in that
Yeah,
there's so many more participants now? Is that a concern?
yes, kind of. So this is a part of my own pet retrospective, actually. The fact is that the ACD process, in my opinion, is not designed to scale linearly with the amount of people. In my opinion, it might need eventually to be capped somehow, or to create. So there was this idea of creating a steering committee in the pet retrospective forum. Um, and this committee decides on what goes into an art fork, and then ACDs are just used to discuss technical things instead of doing also. So you essentially want to separate governance from development. Also, you need, if you look at just straight up the ACD process and how things get into Ethereum, you will notice that usually the overhead is decision making. It's not governance. Like right now, we have pretty much done. We have you have pretty much production ready in many clients, not production ready, but ready. Like you can start DevNets with it. But again, it might get cancelled again, and if it gets cancelled, it doesn't get shipped. So it's, in my opinion, it might that might be a solution, but we will figure it out. I think going on forward, the ACD process needs to account for linearly increasing amount of stakeholders and somehow cap it or making it more tame in some way, shape, or form.
That's fair. Let's go back to the discussion on the block gas limit. And you've tried in the past to get developers to include an an increase to the block gas limit that happens gradually. There's a couple other limitations, right? The consensus layer is truly limited on technically for safe block gas increases. The developers literally had to tell everyone to validators to stop increasing the block gas limit, to only increase it to 36 million. How confident are you that block gas limit will be a priority in Fusaka?
So I think I'm quite confident it is now a priority. Let's answer each question separately, right? Um, so yes, it's going to be a priority in Fusaka. It's going to be a priority because you need it for many things. You need it for account abstraction. You need it for censorship resistance, like Vitalik said today in his blog post, and effectively every single UX improvement to Ethereum is bottlenecked by the gas limit. You can't push people to use something like a smart contract wallet if it costs too much to use. Another important key thing in the gas limit, which kind of relates to EF leadership a little bit. In the past, we have pushed users to use the rollup centric Ethereum without the rollup centric Ethereum actually being ready. Right now, I would say that it's in a beta. It's in beta stage. It works, but it's not the final product. And we've essentially pushed people to use an unfinished product. And in hindsight, this was a mistake. It was a mistake. It was a mistake because, the UX is not very good, and an immediate mitigation of this would be to increase just the gas limit, at least until it's ready. If it's not ready, people are not going to use it for many things. And unfortunately, we saw that Ethereum couldn't capture value from certain for certain applications during this last few months, and that's a shame. And
I agree. I think the roll-up centric roadmap is a great long-term scaling roadmap, but it was a roadmap that Ethereum pivoted too hard to too
and
quickly.
yeah, and just to be clear, sharding is if your application scales, whatever it is, Amazon, Microsoft, or any other, or if anything scales, you need to shard your state. You need to do it. It's not. It happens. If you grow big enough, you need to shard, right? So you need to go to some form of sharding. Okay, so that's undoubtedly true.
Yeah. I also think that when we think about sharding, like we're thinking also about like distributed systems. And the biggest tech companies in the world, like Amazon, they're all trying to figure out how to scale like distributed systems and to do load balancing and to like really push the needle on being resilient and not having centralized points of failure. So like to the extent that you have centralized blockchains that are also trying to tackle the same thing, like I think centralized companies will always win out. But uniquely, like public blockchains might be very inefficient distributed systems. They might be very inefficient databases, but their core value proposition is being censorship resistant, of not having being able to be like regulatory capture. And that is, I think, a leaning and a competitive advantage of public blockchains that lately is not appreciated enough. Like when I think about some people who consider just the idea of a distributed system that might be centralized but is very fast, I'm like, companies are already building this. Like companies are leagues ahead of public blockchains in this because public blockchains, yeah.
You have that already, yes, and yeah, a block. In my personal opinion, blockchain technology is very useful because it's decentralized and it removes the trusted intermediary. If you reintroduce it, why are you building a blockchain? I don't think that makes a lot of sense personally. So yeah, I just don't see personally. I just don't see reason why not building just a fintech application in fintech or something like that. Just a Revolut. Just do Revolut if you want to do that.
We were talking, you were saying that you have high conviction that the black gas limit will get into Fusaka. I have two questions related to that, two kind of takeaways then. Number one, black gas limit increases aren't the only thing that developers consider are important. And you mentioned the execution layer is being very, very contentious. There's other ones like fossil, ePBS, um, and fossil ePBS, and maybe some SSZ related changes as well from Pectra. Any other kind of contenders for Fusaka you think have a good chance, almost as high as block gas limit increases, to get into the Fusaka upgrade? Any others that you just want to highlight as a front runner for Fusaka?
So I think that on the one you mentioned, the one most likely to get into Fusaka is ePBS because it's already. Yeah, I know it's shocker. Also there is an interesting thing about ePBS is that ePBS ironically increases the gas limit. It scales Ethereum to some extent because you have more time to distribute bandwidth and process the block. So there is that, but also ePBS, it's very well, it's packed, and there is actually, and Prism actually had an implementation that was finalizing, which means it's a very real thing. Uh, I think the least likely to happen is SSZ because, if anything, because it's a refactoring, and with Pectra, a big point of pain is that we included too many refactorings, like MaxAB, like the execution triggerable exits, and what that caused was that this hard fork took a long time, but it's not very meaningful for the user. What the user got was basically native account abstraction and the increase in blob count, which are very small changes compared to MaxAB and the execution triggerable exits. So there is that, and so I don't think SSD is gonna get in because people in the retrospective said that essentially these refactorings we should think about these refactorings more.
Hmm. And perhaps do it all in one go rather than piecemeal.
Yeah, also that, but it's in general. If you go through the forum of the Petra retrospective, so SSZ is a huge refactoring on the execution layer. You're effectively changing the main encoding of the execution layer, and it's just there. And I think it's actually going to happen alongside a change in the Ethereum tree, like with Verkle tree or with the binary Poseidon hash tree or whatever you're going to come up with. because because as it stands now, SSD is basically it's just how can I put it? It's too complex. It needs to come, in my opinion. It's just too complex. It's just too many pieces, just too many parts, and I think you need to make it come with maybe, I don't know, you need to combine it with the Verkle or something like that that actually touches the same thing.
Yeah, it's too big of a lift.
It's too big for no benefit, essentially.
Well, I mean, to the question of, things being too big of a lift and touching too many pieces of the code stack, everyone thought that an increase to the block gas limit was going to be a simple, great, improvement to Ethereum. And lo and behold, there was this limitation on the consensus layer side that nobody knew about and that researchers last minute had to talk about. Ethereum's code base is now 2 layers: execution layer, consensus layer, and the engine API. And, developers are considering, code changes. They were considering Verkle. You just talked about the complexity of SSC. There's even longer term objectives like the Beam chain. Are you concerned at all that Ethereum will break? That like Pectra, with the number of EIPs that are going in, that at some point this code base, it becomes too valuable, too complex to change anymore? Are you concerned at all that the complexity of the code base is making these upgrades just too risky?
Yeah, it depends on the upgrade. Generally, that tends to be the case, but it's also the case that if you don't that if you just make the code your platform stagnate, it also loses value to everyone else. So there is no easy answer here from my side. I think so. So I don't think we're at that point yet. I don't think we're close to that point yet. I think Ethereum is okay. It's right now, at least it's not. It is complex, but it's not that complex. Do you
It
disagree?
seems very complex to me.
It is
But that's also
complex,
because
yes,
I'm
but
non-technical.
yeah, it is complex. It is relatively complex, but it's not so complex that you cannot change it. At least not right now. Regarding now, will it break with an increase in the gas limit? Well, we will test it. It will be tested. There is kind of this idea of running like a stress test DevNet with 10 times the gas limit and see what breaks first, and then we can essentially just fix until it works and then just increase the bar over and over and over. Another cool thing is that I did DIP on incremental gas limit, and one of the main benefits is that you actually don't immediately do the jump, you do it
Mm.
slightly. So if things break, they don't break immediately, or at least not everything breaks. Maybe if, for example, if the gas limit were increased before Pectra to 45 million and the CL gossip broke, what would have happened is that some blocks would have missed, but the chain wouldn't have died completely, right?
Hmm.
But if you do too big of a change too quickly, you might find out that everything might die, right? Everything might die. So that's also one of the reasons why I made that EIP. And yes, I think it needs to be tested, and we will figure it out. But there is a lot of incentive for people to actually look into it now, because it's becoming people are talking about it essentially, right? Everyone's talking about it. You can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, the blog post by Vitalik definitely helped, and I'm going to link that into our show notes. One last question for you, as it relates to continuing to upgrade Ethereum, continuing to work on Ethereum as a protocol developer. One of the main consensus items from the Pectra retrospective was that Ethereum developers should upgrade Ethereum faster, that they should upgrade Ethereum twice a year and not once a year, 6 months, one every 6 months.
So this is funny because you can either do two things: work harder or work smarter. That's the two things you can do essentially. So if you work harder, you risk. If you work harder, I mean, I think you're already working quite hard, in my personal opinion. But if you were to work harder or try to at least speed things up, you might break things. We are
That's what
already
I'm worried about.
yeah, we are already working, I think, as fast as we can. It's not like we want Ethereum to be slow. That's for sure. Then regarding the working smarter, there are many ideas. Some of them are focused on the development part. Some other are focused on the organizational part, like what I said before about the steering committee, which is something that was brought up during in the Pectra retrospective formed by a bunch of people. Regarding development, unfortunately, and making people ship faster, you cannot really do much because it's already going as fast as possible. And even if you reduce the amount of clients necessary to perform the hard fork, if you look at Pectra, you would have saved only 1 week if you would have, because 3 clients had problems in DevNet 5. 3 out of 5 execution client had problems. You can. So if you said to yourself, we ship with 2 clients, okay, you would have saved 1 week. Congratulations.
Like, that's not the problem here. We got to work smarter.
Yeah, so I don't think so. In short, I think we need to work smarter, and probably the issues in the decision making rather than in the development itself. That's my intuition.
If Ethereum can't upgrade 6 months a year for whatever reason, like you said, the decision making, maybe the complexity of the code base, maybe, there continues to be these bottlenecks. Is that a critical kind of like will make Ethereum less competitive than other general purpose blockchains? Like, does that spell the beginning of the decline for Ethereum's value proposition if Ethereum can't upgrade faster?
Well, no, not really. No, I don't think that. Usually, we actually ship. In my opinion, actually, Ethereum has shipped quite. It hasn't shipped slowly in the past. The reason why Pectra felt slow is because we included too many things that users don't touch, and when it's gonna be shipped, it's not gonna be the most exciting art fork, and people will have this sentiment that Ethereum is slow. But I think this is kind of you can think of this, I think, as kind of a black swan event of some sort. It was kind of a mistake, perhaps, and I think that everyone kind of learned their lessons here. So I think in the long term, this small bump is it's just gonna make us stronger. If anything, it's not really going to destroy Ethereum just because we did one art fork slowly. But yeah, people have this. Yeah, I mean, this is the reason why people do think that it's because in 1 year we shipped one art fork. We are shipping one art fork that includes minimal changes to users.
I mean, it took developers like 6, maybe 5 years to ship the merge. These like good technical changes do take time. And yeah, part of me, I'm always worried about the security of the chain more than anything else. So every time a hard fork happens, I'm like nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, is Ethereum going to break? Can developers stop upgrading? But I understand there's things that we need to make Ethereum usable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that if Ethereum stops upgrading right now, it will just die.
Yeah.
Just a completely straight up answer. Like I will just change profession.
Is there anything else that would make you leave Ethereum protocol development?
Oh wow, that's a question.
I just thought about that like on the spot, but then you brought it up. You literally teed up that question.
I mean, it depends. As I said, I think one quick thing, if one thing that would make me probably leave if things just slow down to the point where there is no change, and if
Yeah.
that's actually the trajectory, then it doesn't make any sense to work on something like that, right? But I don't think that's the case. I'm optimistic it's not the case. I don't know any other reasons. I don't know if somebody offers me $5 million a year, maybe. That's a very good incentive, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Giulio, for the thoughts and the insights on being a core developer and working on Pectra, looking ahead to Fusaka. I wish you guys success in trying to finalize it by the time that Pectra goes live on mainnet.
Yeah,
I wish you.
we already are kind of we already quite we're already there actually. So I think it's not gonna be a big effort. I think we're gonna start focusing hard on it after Pectra, and we're gonna go on DevNet soon.
And we'll go to the moon. I think I like that.
Yeah, not yet. Not today, but one day.
But one day.
One day, hopefully.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And thank you to all of our listeners who were tuning in to another episode of The Infinite Jungle. We hope that you learned something new about Ethereum. I hope that you'll join us again for another episode. I am signing off from the concrete jungle that is New York City. Giulio, where are you signing off from?
I'm in Zug. Right now I'm in Zug, in Switzerland.
Amazing. We are signing off from Switzerland and from the United States this episode. In your explorations of the infinite jungle that is Ethereum, stay safe out there.